Test, 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 test. Hey, there we go. Test, test. Do you want to call first?
Sure. Yeah. Well, good afternoon. I call the special meeting for the Ames City Council to order on Wednesday, April 5th.
Yeah, and I call the student government portion of the joint City Council student government meeting to order. If we could do roll call on the student government portion, we'll zip through it. But if you're here, please say here or present. Agba. Becker. Braun. Bruick. Burks. Cecil. Dre. Eisma. Engelken. Frencher. Gopa. Hackbarth. Heidenreich. Holiday. Kamstra. Kuehler. Mahoney. Margaret. Mays. Moscar. Momini. Patel. Schnepp. Slade. Slater. Tansey. Topete. And Vo. Wonderful. With that, we have quorum.
Well, good afternoon, and we have 4 of our 6 city council members here. We have Gloria Betcher, Ward 1. Anita Rollins is on the way. She texted and said she's running a few minutes late. We have Tim Garton, our Ward 2 representative, and we have Amber Corrieri, one of our at-large, and 2 of our council members regretfully could not make it today. So we have there's no business being conducted officially, so we don't need a quorum. And Councilmember Corrieri said that she has to leave at 6, so she's not going to leave because she's mad or disappointed in the conversation. But if she leaves, just so you're aware that she has another commitment tonight. So, and on the agenda is just a welcome message. And we said this before, and we'll say it again. We just always appreciate the opportunity to engage in conversation with student government, and we value Tabitha joining us as an ex officio. And I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight because this is really kind of an open forum and discussion for you to talk about specific topics, and we want to hear from you what concerns and see if there's some things we can do strategically to move things forward to make Ames an even more welcoming and beneficial place for you to live. So look forward to the time together.
Perfect. I'll just throw my 2 cents in quick. Want to thank the members of council and the city staff who have come out today. Thank you for making the time in your busy schedules to speak with us. These meetings represent a really awesome opportunity for the kind of 2 centers of gravity in Ames to come together and talk about some of our shared problems and work together towards shared solutions. So really encourage you to, the student government members, to ask questions tonight, to be talkative, and to engage. Especially, I know a lot of members are returning next year. This is a great time to start long-term conversations about how we can work into the next year to continue to make the Ames community a place that's great for both residents and students.
All right, if we just want to do the Pledge of Allegiance, we will then move into our discussion for the evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If there are no objections to the agenda tonight, we will consider it as adopted. Seeing no objections. All right, we will move into our first topic of the evening, which is public transportation and bike routes. So any topics concerning that, we will talk on this matter for approximately 20 minutes. So the floor is open. Senator Hackbarth.
Hi, thank you Ames City Council for joining us this evening. So the College of Engineering recently had a Dean's Forum where we spoke with students of all different backgrounds, and one concern of our international students was the fact that Cyride is not as prevalent on the weekend, and they feel like there is a lack of routes going to Duff and to East Ames, and that is something that they would like to see addressed or potentially change in the future. So that's just some feedback we've received from some engineering students.
As you may be aware, Cyride is actually overseen by an independent or separate board that's made up of Iowa State students, some administration officials, our city manager. Actually, Jacob has served on that, and Tim was on that for a while. Bronwyn is currently our appointee for Transit Board. While council does approve officially approves the budget and purchases, it does not oversee the day-to-day operation. So I'm going to let, Tim, do you have any comments or input on this one as a former board member? And we can certainly bring some feedback, back to Bronwyn, and she can bring it back to the Transit Board.
Yeah, sure. And we love Cyride, and it's a very important asset in the community. I ride Cyride myself, and but it's on a very tight budget. And so I think providing these suggestions on route changes, providing those to Cyride is a good thing, and they'll take those and they'll look at ridership, and there's some very smart people that try to find ways to accommodate that. But just know that there's not a slush fund of money that is there ready to add new routes. Cyride really is here because we have federal dollars that goes to purchase and subsidize the bus system. And so, I think the suggestions are good. I don't have any particular feedback on those certain routes, but I think those should be made to the Cyride staff, and they'll try to take those into account.
Any other comments? Yeah, Jacob, do you want to join in on this? I know that.
Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. I was just going to add real quick. If this is something you do want to pursue, you can start these conversations now. Cyride typically adds routes close to the budget cycle, so that's typically approved by the board in November or December, and then that goes to council later on. And so we'd also want to do that probably in around the same time that we do the fee process. And so if we wanted to pay for additional hours or routes, then that would be a conversation we would again want to start early. So this would be a great thing to take into the next year and have a conversation. Do we want to raise the Cyride fee a certain amount to be able to pay for those additional hours? Right now, there is not that kind of money in the budget. If anything, we're looking more at the streamlining end of things. So it would definitely have to be something that we'd have to consider under the fee process.
I'll just add that, I'll get to you a second, Gloria. I had the honor of serving on Transit Board a number of years ago before I was mayor. And back then, to add a route, it was about $130,000 per route to add one because of obviously the frequency of the bus, driver, equipment. So it's not a small undertaking fiscally. And so that's one thing too is, you mentioned east access. There is a special, kind of like an on-demand, you can contact Cyride and make some arrangements. I believe that the pickup is by City Hall, I believe. Is that the pink route? Is that right? I know that and that was done because we didn't have a huge amount of ridership out to the east side of Ames. And we're trying to get more ridership or more services on the more heavily used routes. And so we're just kind of doing some shuffling. So a lot of the east side. Now, you said access to Duff. That's really a main corridor, so I'm a little surprised that there's not as much access. Can you identify what that concern is?
Allow me to get the microphone. That'd probably be helpful.
Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Transit Board, but I'm just trying to give you some constructive
No.
feedback based on some of my experience.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely valid. So the main concern that was brought up was not necessarily the lack of like route coverage, perhaps I didn't use the correct word. It was more so the frequency of the buses on like the weekends when they like say they need to run to Target to pick up groceries and then they have to wait 45 minutes or an hour even for the next bus to come. So it was much more about the frequency of when the bus arrives on the weekends, not so much as adding a new route.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Jacob? And then we'll go to Gloria.
Yeah. Again, I think that's definitely a conversation we can have with the board. In that case, it would definitely be more of a conversation of putting an additional bus on the route, which would probably be of similar cost to the amount that the mayor outlined, just because, I mean, at that point, we're talking about fuel costs and hourly wages. I will say, we look pretty close at data at SciRide in terms of what ridership is on specific days, and so that's usually how we determine, you know, how frequent routes are going to be. And I mean, I would suspect right now that the data doesn't really support, you know, cutting the 40 minutes down to say like 20. And that's not saying that it isn't valuable to have those routes going out to that area. I just think maybe not enough people are using it. If it's something we wanted to push harder, you know, make a point. I know that there's been conversations over the last year about, you know, expanding some of the routes in the east end of Ames, you know, more around the city center. You know, as those conversations develop, you know, that could be something that we talk more about.
So I was going to confirm what the mayor said, although I think the last number we might have heard was 150,000 per route. And I represent the first ward, which includes that area on Duff. And there have been concerns from residents who are living down in the South Duff area about the frequency. And so that is a continuing conversation. And, you know, as Jacob said, I don't think it's going to be lost. But as an extra plug, if any of you know people who are looking for good jobs, we do still need SciRide drivers. And we obviously can't add more buses without having the drivers to do that. And so please get the word out that SciRide is still hiring, because ever since the pandemic, we have been struggling to staff all our routes consistently.
Senator Kamstra.
Hi. So most of my questions are regarding the area around where it is soon to be Sci-Town and the routes that go through there, mainly relating to Orange 23 and Blue 3. So I have two main questions regarding that. How will Sci-Town affect Orange 23 and Blue 3 directly, since that is the current commuter lot? I know we're going to switch that to where Towers is, but is that going to completely rearrange Orange 23? And then how will eliminating parking due to Sci-Town, like it's going to be moved further away, how is like essentially SciRide planning to accommodate those that are now having to park farther away on game days when we're rerouting Blue 3 and stuff like that? Because it's just going to be an influx of pedestrians on a road that has a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. I just see a lot of safety issues coming from that, especially since we're eliminating so much parking, and it's going to be further south. So first, how is Sci-Town going to affect Orange 23 and Blue 3? And will the eliminating of parking like bring forward a additional route specifically for game days from commuter lots?
So this is the Jacob Ludwig show tonight. Actually, I'm glad that he's here because I'm sure you've talked about it, and I don't have anything to add to that. I don't know what council does either, so I'll just defer to Jacob.
Yeah, so with Sci-Town, actually, with the expansion of the parking lots on the north end, we're actually going to end up with more parking spots in that area than we had beforehand. But setting that aside for the moment, where the SciRide stop is located now will be moved to the, I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this.
The northeast.
Yeah, the northeast corner of the lots south of Hilton. So it'll be resituated over there. That will, once Sci-Town is fully up and running, that will continue to be kind of the primary commuter lot. Obviously, in the meantime, that'll be moved to Towers. So in the long run, Orange 23 won't change all that much other than just, moving that point from, the southwest corner to the northeast corner. And they're not really anticipating that there should be enough traffic on most class days, especially during regular class hours, to really impede students from parking there. So they're fairly confident that everything should work out fine, but that's kind of the primary plan right now. As when it comes to game days, I know that we're continuing to have ongoing conversations with the athletics department, and I think that's still kind of far enough out that we're still sorting out some of those details.
I do know that, you probably all are aware, but Orange Route is the most heavily trafficked or used route in the state of Iowa for public transit, even in Des Moines or anything else. It's the highest. And given the number of buses, and I think the goal is to have all articulated buses on that route when they're done. It's got to stay in that same parking area because of the amount of traffic. Residents would be very upset in Campus Town if you started going from Towers, for example, and going down either Welch or Hayward or Lynn or anything. It's just, and the roads just won't take it as well too. So I think that as Jacob said, I had heard that the Ann Campbell Transit Center connection was being relocated. Still the same location, but I think temporarily they may have to just move that. But good questions, and it's a lot of logistics to work through.
Awesome, thank you. And then one last kind of more encouragement is to make more frequent stops to downtown, because me and my own friends personally have learned to fall in love with downtown and some of the scenes down there. And I know
We like you. Will you stay here after you graduate?
and I know you talked in the podcast about encouraging students to go downtown, and kind of with the frequency stops on weekends, it kind of ties into that red one route. If we had more frequent red, that would, one, give an opportunity to go to the mall, which would create more flow there, but also that goes through to downtown and would, I don't know, assist me in getting some of my friends to go out there as well that don't have cars. So
That's good feedback. Thank you.
Senator Ogba.
In regards to what Senator Hackbarth had said, this is something that the Director of International Student Experience and Director of Affordability and I have been working on, especially regarding the shuttle frequency and occasions, such as on holidays and for international students to have better access in coming to and from Ames. So if there are any questions, comments that anyone here has after the meeting, we would like to receive them. I yield.
Does someone want to talk about, maybe Amber, just touch on there's bike routes off campus. Maybe just touch on the bike roll ped master plan that we're working on. Maybe just, you have to go into great detail, but just, pardon me? You got it. Tabby sent you. Who is, Gloria or Anita or Tim, you want to touch on that?
So I'm very proud of the bike trail system that we have in Ames. We spend approximately about $1.5 million a year on this. That's comparable to what the city of Des Moines spends, so I'm very proud of the way in which that priority is reflected in our budget. We are constantly trying to find ways to make this better. We recognize that there are a lot of great trail systems that are disconnected, and so we're making very intentional progress at connectivity of those. We have enlisted in my opinion, the best consultant in the country to help us on our bike ped master plan. And so if you have suggestions of maybe parts of town that are not being well served or areas that could be improved, we work closely with Iowa State, so some of the trails, as you may be aware, are institutionally managed, and so some of the trails are handled by Iowa State and some by the city of Ames. I've served, this will be finishing my 10th year and my last year on council, and I will tell you, I am so impressed with the thoughtfulness of our staff, the foresight. They are planning 5 years out in advance and being very strategic in how they make those investments. But if you have some specific suggestions on routes, there is a place on our website on the Bike Master Plan where you can send emails, and if this is a passion of yours and you would like to receive feedback, there's a way in which you can receive emails from this process to let you know where things are. So this is sort of a key time for giving input.
And the $1.5 million we spend a year includes widening some of the streets to make bike lanes on streets, because in some cases we really can't make a bike path, and also adding more bike paths. And we just took bids, and we're going to be paving along the north side of Iowa Creek, down by South Duff. There's a shelf there, so it's going to be taking us down towards Skunk River. I think staff told us that once they gain permission from all the property owners, and they're working on it actively, we're going to be able to go from the Hunsaker Youth Sports Complex all along Skunk River, all the way up to East 13th Street, and be connecting along the river to the park system up there. And the whole vision is to try and have this huge interconnectivity of bike trails throughout the city. And I think we have well over 50 miles of dedicated, bike trails. And you may have seen by the golf course, Coldwater, they are now paving the bike trail from South Grand that will go out to the research park. It's already paved behind the Vet Med complex, but it's going to continue on that down there. So that'll be an exciting addition to our system. So if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it before we transition.
Yeah, our final conversation with Senator Gopa.
Hi, thanks for coming out. Since it's getting warmer, there's been an increase in electric vehicles like e-scooters and e-skateboards on the road. They've become increasingly popular over the years. But the e-scooter community and skateboard community are less likely to use bike paths because they're on the roads and they're kind of dangerous for people using the roads and e-scooter and e-skateboard enthusiasts. There have been some reports from the student community that the sidewalks are not very bike friendly, and in some parts of town, it's not, and some parts don't really have bright enough street lights. Is there any way we can make them better for e-vehicles and bicycles? There have also been some reports of e-vehicle users being pretty rash on the sidewalks too. Has there been any kinds of talks on the city council making any kind of marketing or outreach efforts for the e-vehicle public safety for the community and students?
Please, Gloria.
So the issue of e-vehicles is a large one. As you might know, micromobility is multifaceted. And so we have been in discussions for the last couple of years with Iowa State to try and work out things like scooters on campus and creating an environment that is going to be safe. And at this point, Iowa State's not interested in having scooter rentals, but of course many of you know, and many of you perhaps use your own skateboards or scooters on campus already. The issue is that we do not have guidelines in our policies for micromobility in Ames. And so we've been trying to work with Iowa State to determine what that policy is. And we've also been looking at our own policies. For example, one of the reasons it might not be safe to use, say, scooters on sidewalks is that they technically aren't allowed because they're motorized. So right now, we don't have the ability to legislate them because we haven't considered that option. So we've been talking about the ways in which we might enable safely the use of those motorized methods of transportation on our trail system, on our sidewalks, so that we can ensure that pedestrians are safe and the e-mobility users are also safe, because we recognize that they're a reasonably priced mode of transportation for many students. So it's an ongoing conversation, and I think Deb Schildroth, our Assistant City Manager, has been involved in that discussion in the past. Deb, do you have any updates on where that stands with Iowa State?
Hello, everyone. So we had a memo from President Winterstein's administrative staff. It's probably been about an hour, year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, stating that they didn't want the micromobility rides on campus. And so it was a matter of then trying to find out where those could occur outside of campus, because a lot of people don't realize where a university path or sidewalk ends and where a city path or sidewalk begins. So we've worked with our traffic engineer, Damian Pregitzer, and he did provide a map to the city manager, and that was passed on to President Winterstein's office, and we're waiting for further discussion on what that might look like. Now, micromobility has come up with the bike ped master plan process, as well as our climate action plan as alternative types of transportation. So it still is in front of City Council and tied in with those types of plans, and then figuring out, as Councilperson Betcher said, where we can plug those in within our city ordinance and ensure safety for everyone involved.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I yield.
Just a point of clarification, did you say that there were some conditions on some sidewalks that were not good? Is that right?
I don't know where exactly it is, but if you go down Lincoln Way, there's some sidewalks which are not that great towards Highway and that kind of mini market.
So there is a app, I think we talked about this before, that's Ames on the Go. Thank you. You can download that. If you can actually take a picture of, let's say, a bad sidewalk, and you can link that, and you can submit a complaint or a concern or a safety hazard, and then it will just go right to that department. They can look into it, and so it really allows for a specific identification of concerns or issues. So if someone is raising that concern, please encourage them to do that, because we want to get feedback and make sure that we have good routes. Can't say it's going to be fixed immediately, but maybe it could be put into a capital improvement plan.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further conversation about the public transport and bike routes, we will now move on to our housing and property discussion, which will endure 30 minutes. So if you have anything, please raise your placard. We'll start with Senator Agba.
Hi. Iowa State's 5-year plan projects that the apartment and residence halls students will climb above 10,000 again in the next two years. And earlier this year, the mayor broke the vote among city council members of forming a measure to investigate possible ordinance to limit the size of vehicles on residential streets. So my question is, what discussions have been made in regards to more affordable housing, and what may become of students who may be moved because of these ordinances?
Okay, I'll make sure I capture, or we can capture your points that are, in your comments. One, I think, is the ordinance that is to investigate, and I think it's citizens living in personal vehicles, I think, is really kind of that issue. You also mentioned about the Board of Regents plan, or the estimates for people living on and off, on campus, is that right?
Both. For students who may not be able to afford the housing, having to move into their vehicles, and then in turn having to be moved in regards to the ordinances.
Okay. And I'm just curious, and I hate to sound naive, but are there a lot of students that are living in vehicles?
I am not sure, but that was apparently quite a big point as what was talked about within these city council meetings.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a student. I think it was a specific individual. But with that said, I'll open it up to the council members to, share some thoughts and where we're at. And we'll start with Amber, and then I would trust that Tim and Anita and Gloria may want to weigh in too. So, thank you for the question, by the way.
So I'll touch on the vehicle piece real quick, and other council members can obviously weigh in. But, we're essentially asking city staff to come back to us with a report on regulating vehicles of a certain size parked on city streets. So it's not necessarily in reference to a typical vehicle that, a student or really anyone would be driving. It's in reference to very large vehicles like RVs or buses and that type of thing. And even with that being said, again, we're just asking for more information. We're not at a point at all at council to move forward with any type of regulation or limitation. It's merely just kind of a fact-finding issue right now. And there'll be more to come on that at next week's council meeting. In terms of affordable housing in general, I can just talk a little bit about that. The city is currently moving forward with some affordable housing in West Ames. We have a development that we've been working on for a while, the Baker subdivision, that will include both single-family and multifamily affordable housing for people at the 60% area median income limit, as well as some mixed market rate housing as well. In addition, the city, through the asset process, which I think a lot of you are familiar with because student government participates in that, the city does fund a number of human service organizations that support affordable housing, whether that's emergency shelter or supportive housing. And, the millions of dollars literally that go to that is always being evaluated and improved as we kind of look at the outcomes and what agencies are doing and the types of waiting lists or other challenges that they may have. I know at next week's joint funder meeting for Asset, we'll be discussing an RFP for additional emergency shelter services in Ames. We've been evaluating that for the last couple of years and how that's being addressed. And so there'll be more to come on that as well.
Thank you for that. I yield.
The subject of affordable housing could take us days to sort of unpack. And I'd like to, unless you guys really want to talk about owner-occupied housing, I'd like to focus more on apartments, which I think is has more relevance for students. 5 or 6 years ago, when we had this meeting, we heard in stereo concerns from students about double-digit increases in rents. That concern has by and large gone down. So there was not enough supply of apartments, and so law of economics, the rents went up. We have not seen a new multifamily large apartment complex built for several years. I would anticipate as the population of Ames continues to grow, I think the market will eventually see some greater supply. But I think it's been sort of a nice place right now. The occupancy rates are more of a healthy level. There's some level of vacancy, which we hadn't seen in years past. So I'm encouraged by that. So you have issues of supply and demand that affect your rents, but also issues of taxes. And I'll just take a quick second to talk about the fact there's a lot of discussion about property taxes going on in Ames right now. People receive their property assessments, and they went up significantly. I'm here to tell you that the city of Ames runs a very tight budget. Our budget went up about 3.6%, which is incredibly disciplined given the rate of inflation that we've experienced. So I'm very proud of the disciplined, thoughtful approach. But that can change. And so if future councils decide to take a more aggressive approach on spending, those property tax increases will be passed on to tenants. So I think historically the city of Ames has maintained a very strong commitment to keeping people's property taxes as low as possible and yet delivering a very good form and cost-effective form of city government. So those are a couple of variables, supply and taxes, that are good to keep in mind.
Anita?
Well, a couple of things. One is that we are looking for other ways to provide more housing options that may benefit students as well. Accessory dwelling units, the potential for that in some of our neighborhoods that are closer to campus is a real opportunity. Also looking at issues of infill and thinking about how can we make more housing available, again, more central within the city, and looking at our policies to see how we can make sure that opportunities are available for that infill to happen in ways that are affordable, as well as thinking about how we might incentivize the type of development that we would like to see.
Gloria?
So I'd just like to follow up on what Amber was saying about the discussion regarding the living in vehicles. I think that there may have been a little bit of perhaps misrepresentation of the discussion that we had. And as the mayor said, this was really focused on one individual in a bus. And so what we've asked for is information not only on the size of vehicles that can be parked on residential streets. We've got a concern about residential versus commercial streets and industrial streets. We have different types of streets. We also are concerned about safety because that bus has a wood-burning stove in it. And so the kinds of information that we're going to be getting back, including the size of vehicles on streets, which could impact people who might want to park RVs during football games, you know, that it's not just one person living in a bus. We recognize that there are challenges in trying to create a policy. One size does not fit all. But we're also looking at those safety regulations that we might want to have in place, because I don't think anybody really thinks having a wood-burning stove on a school bus is a good idea. And we also have some concerns about sanitation and the fact that a bus isn't hooked up to sewer mains. So we need to be able to be in a position to make smart decisions, and that's what we asked for information on. And always we're conscious of not criminalizing those people who are unhomed. We do not want to create that kind of situation. We certainly don't want our police being put in that situation, and nobody needs that. So this is an ongoing discussion, and when we get more information, we'll know what direction we need to go further with that discussion.
Senator Momini.
On the topic of the vehicles, I understand it's still very much in discussion and just trying to get a feel for the land. If it were to be decided that these vehicles weren't allowed to park on residential streets or streets in general, excuse my ignorance, I'm not sure if we already have a place where they could go, like an RV park or something. If we didn't, would that be part of the discussion of building something where if they're not allowed to park on these in these residential areas, is there another safe space that they can occupy?
That's a really good question, and no ignorance there, because it's really a new topic. So do anyone want to take that one on? Go ahead, Gloria.
One of the things that was mentioned at the council meeting where this came up came from Councilmember Beatty Hansen, who is not here. And she asked that question of, is this something that we need to discuss to create a safe place where people could park? And so I anticipate that could be part of our discussion moving forward. However, again, we're conscious of creating a safe environment, and that would mean someplace well lighted, that we are not putting people in danger because they're camping there. So it will be part of the discussion, I'm sure, at some point, but I don't know what point that would be.
Yeah, I think to my knowledge too is that I believe that, I think this is correct, I believe the city has an ordinance that does not allow overnight parking like at Walmart or large, big box stores, for example. In some communities you may go and see where there are RVs that park, in the outlying areas of that. But I think that is not allowed in Ames by ordinance, so that may be something that you looked at as well, too. Did you have a follow-up question, or do we help you? Did we answer your question?
Senator Kamstra.
I have two questions. They kind of sort of relate to each other, but I'll go for the first one first. Who or where do students go when they feel they've been like mistreated by a landlord or landlord company, for example, in regard to rent raising drastically between years, property damage not being repaired, maintenance, etc.? Do we have a resource for just residents or even students?
We typically say that the relationships between renters and landlords are a private sector issue. It's not something that City Council deals with. However, there are, I think, well, I don't know, we tried having a Rent Smart Ames website, and I have no idea what the status of that is. The student government worked really hard on that a few years back, and I believe that it has not taken off the way we hoped it would, and that it has not been maintained as we would have liked to have seen it, because it was difficult to get buy-in from landlords. So we have attempted to deal with that in the past, but at this point, the leases, the lease gap, the rise in prices, all of that is a private sector issue. And if you do have concerns about that, talking to the landlord, and then maybe, going further and talking to a legal representative of some kind. And I certainly can't advise you on that because I'm an English professor and I really don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to that kind of representation.
I do kind of my follow-up question kind of relates a little bit more to the public sector of that being regular maintenance and structural integrity of these buildings and stuff like that. So my roommate's girlfriend got evicted from her apartments at the Madison due to furnaces not being checked and risk of carbon monoxide. Is there anything being done to ensure like something so sudden and dramatic doesn't happen again in the city?
Tim, you want to talk about that, or?
Sure. First of all, I'm sorry that happened. We have a very robust inspection process to make sure that the places where you live are safe, but sometimes there are going to be situations where that happens, and I just want to tell you I'm very sorry that happened. We can't inspect properties every month. It's every other year inspection. It's very rigorous, actually. If anything, we get complaints that it's too rigorous. But there are going to be landlords that are not attentive to these things. I would say the vast majority of our landlords are very serious about the safety of their residents. There have been a couple of situations where the university has stepped up in an emergency basis where there's been a fire to provide some temporary housing. But I don't have a particularly good answer. Sometimes government just doesn't have a good answer on something. And as the mayor indicated, I think this is probably one of those.
With the Madison, that was kind of a unique situation, and I don't want to go into all the details because I'm going to have some wrong, but I think that there was some misrepresentation by some service companies of things that were done and repairs that were supposed to be made that were not made. And I will say this, is that when it was brought to our inspections department notice, they immediately went out and they went through and they looked at every furnace and they red tagged a lot of them because they had carbon monoxide, issues, and then the landlord was required to essentially either fix or replace. It had to go through every apartment essentially and take care of it and take it very seriously. And to their credit, they did get people up there and they got it done in a pretty quick order. But as Councilman Garten said, there's a rotation that we do in terms of inspection. I think it's every couple of years is what they go through and do the inspection. Regarding if you have some structural issue, if there's some kind of, major cracks are developing, or let's say you have a whole wall of mold all of a sudden that's coming up, we do have our inspection department is called by individuals and say, hey, I think this is a health issue, and they parse through and determine whether or not they have jurisdiction to go ahead and do it. Certainly if it's a structural issue, where I'm gonna be silly, but if all of a sudden the deck falls off the back of a house for sake of discussion, or comes loose, they would come out and, immediately and look at it and determine if there's a life safety issue or if there's a, personal safety issue. They can require repairs be made and inspect them. It's like anything, though, in life, is that it's a two-party situation. The people that are getting the permits need to comply with what they're supposed to be doing, and if they're not really doing that, then we can try and catch it, but we're not going to not catch everything. But yeah, we regret what happened at the Madison, but it got taken care of quickly. But that was a pretty extreme situation, I think, that did occur. But anyway, so thanks for the question.
I appreciate the honesty also, Councilmember. I yield.
Senator Momini.
I guess I have a comment for you. I could have just discussed this after the meeting, but for anybody else who might have friends or constituents who are wondering, relationships with landlords can get really tense when they're not meeting your needs, and it can be pretty scary because, they're in charge of your rent, they're in charge of where you live. You don't want to be out on the street. We have a great resource who comes here all the time, Student Legal Services. If you have any questions like that, I would definitely refer your friends to them.
Yeah.
It's a legally binding document at the end of the day. If they're trying to break the rules and regulations that they had you sign to, take them to court.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents on the topic. I yield.
There also is an Ames landlord or rental organization that landlords belong to. And so I think that they recognize that students are a very important constituent. So I think that if there was some issues coming up, you could probably encourage them to contact that organization. You just Google them. And they're organized such that they have a person who's either president or the chair of the organization. And I would talk to them and explain the situation. And hopefully they can be self-policing and take care of issues. But as Mr. Garten said, I think that we got an oversupply all of a sudden, I think, of apartments, which kind of helped reduce some of that. But we can't attest to what the rents are going for today.
Is there any further conversation on the topic of housing and property? Seeing none, we will move on to the topic of parking and citations. If there's any discussion about this, it'll go about 10 minutes. Senator Kamstra.
Back again. Can you just talk about a little bit what this means by parking violation increases on the agenda? Is there going to be parking violation increases, or I don't know why that's really on there?
Yeah, she's taking care of this.
Yeah, I put this on here because I don't know if you guys remember a few weeks ago at City Council, it was something discussed for game days and Cyclone Welcome Weekend. Since that does widely affect students, it's not something that we've talked about recently in the past 2 or 3 weeks, but I wanted to bring it up to you guys since it is something that largely affects students. If there is any input, since it was increased last year, I know, and there was a lot of comments and concerns about it, so I wanted to at least bring it up so there was a student perspective on the topic.
So right now, I do not recall, I don't think, it's not on the agenda or a future agenda to be increasing parking violation, parking tickets. And I think we've shared this before. Maybe many of you have been already have heard this song and dance. But the concern that we have, if you have parking on both sides, especially in Campus Town area or west of Campus Town, is that the streets aren't very wide. And so and as you've probably seen, fire trucks and ambulances are pretty wide, and they will get through, and someone will be having a big body repair work job if they have to basically take out your mirrors or take out other things. And so it's really a public safety situation, trying to keep one side of the street, clear so we can get through and provide service to the residents. We did increase the fine a few years ago on game day because people decided, well, it was just as convenient to go ahead and pay the parking ticket because it was the same thing that you pay to park in the parking lot. I think it was like $20, I think, was what it was for illegal parking in Campus Town. So I think it was increased to $40 or $50. It wasn't like it was $100 or $200. And we don't do it to try and supplement our budget. It's just we want to discourage that. So, but we went higher because we want to make sure that it costs you more. And people still will do that, but it has been diminished. Regarding Cyclone Welcome Weekend, we did implement, and council did pass, if you're illegally parked, you will be towed on the spot. Typically, you'll get cited, or someone will be cited first before they get towed. And by the way, I know that some private towing companies, if you park in the wrong spot, in an apartment complex, I've heard that it costs an awful lot of money to get your car, pulled, out. Well, the city has a contract with I think it's with CIT. They will do the towing, but the towing is like 60 or it's less than $100 essentially is what it is. So we're not trying to gouge anybody. But the whole idea is that we're trying to basically make sure that we had streets that were clear, not having double parking on both sides, and also trying to do a little bit of management and reducing some of the, the 300 of your best friends coming to a gathering. And so as Chief Huff said, I think it was at our fall session, he was expecting to tow well over 100 cars, and he said it was less than, I think it was 30 cars or a little less than 30 cars. So it really did work, but the police department spent, I think it was $2,000 or $3,000, I think, out of their budget to print all the signs, to go around with the staff, to put the signs up, to take them down, and also try and get the word out. So we really don't want to tow cars. We don't want to really collect any fines if we can avoid it. It's just more or less for public safety and for convenience, and also trying to make sure everyone can enjoy their time, celebrating. So this coming year, for Cyclone Welcome Weekend in the fall, it'll be the same ordinance because the ordinance actually has to be reinitiated. And then also we play Iowa this year in football here, and so the chief has mentioned that will probably be another weekend. We will initiate that one where there'll be an immediate towing that might occur during that weekend. But we don't use it it's not in place every weekend. It's only used and it's only has a lifespan of that particular weekend. And then it basically sunsets and it has to be reinitiated for the next time.
Senator Dre.
All right. My question comes from off-campus constituents. So there's one part of Knapp that intersects with Sheldon that is just like you just turn. There's no stop sign. There's no way to go straight or the other way. And I've heard from multiple people that this turn is kind of scary because it's a 90-degree angle. You can't see around it, and people don't slow down because there is no stop or yield. And so I just wondered if you guys had heard anything about that specific intersection.
No, but if your constituent or constituents would email council and raise that issue, then we can go ahead and refer that to staff. Our traffic engineer can look at it, and if it's determined that that really is a safety concern, a stoplight or stop sign, not stoplight, stop sign can be put in place or some kind of other signage. And there are times where we do get requests from neighborhoods where they want to change no parking on one side of the street from one side to the other from a visibility standpoint or for whatever reason. So that would be a very simple way to do it. It's just have them email council.
Awesome. Thank you.
Did you have something you want to add, Gloria?
Yeah, I live over that area, so I go around that corner a lot, and it is scary. In the past, there has been a lane painting around that corner, and people largely ignored it. So it deteriorated and it was not replaced. And I would love to see other people complain about that particular intersection, because I do think it's dangerous and people do cut the corner frequently.
Yeah, and even maybe putting in a circular mirror or something, you know, there's like bubble mirrors that you can see around corners with something to change that. But yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, we would actually not dictate or say what should be done. It would just be referred to our traffic engineer and say that we've got a concern and ask them to look at it. But if you want to have them suggest or ask that situation and visibility, they'll take it very seriously and they'll look into it. So thanks for that.
All right. If there's no further discussion on parking and citations, we'll move on to a rather fun topic of student engagement and involvement with the City of Ames. This topic will endure about 15 minutes. Senator Margaret.
Well, firstly, thank you everyone for being here. I haven't talked yet, so we appreciate the attendance from council tonight. I'm unfamiliar with plans and updates for the indoor pool facility, so I'm just hoping that someone can touch on what that item is referring to.
Sure, we can all talk about that. Who wants to? Amber, you're going to be taking off, so why don't you just share some thoughts before you take off?
All right. So we are moving forward, finally. It's been a long time coming, with plans for an indoor aquatic center. I don't know if you're all aware, but the City of Ames and the school district shared an indoor pool for many, many, many years that was located at the high school. And when the high school built their new facility, the municipal pool was eliminated and they built a competition pool, which is wonderful for them, but not really suitable for little kids swim lessons and people who want to swim laps and do water aerobics and all of those things. And, we just need a better facility in general when we talk about creating a space for families and young people and making our community more vibrant. Having that sort of facility is, I think, something that we all wanted. And so we are moving forward. It will be located at the old DOT site on Lincoln Way. So a great connection to downtown Ames, accessible via Cyride and all of those wonderful things. It will have a lap pool. I think 6 lanes is what we're discussing at the moment. And what you would think of as an aquatic center for kids with slides and all of those features, and then a warm water therapy pool as well that Mary Greeley is partnering with us on. We are also discussing, it hasn't been finalized because the budget continues to increase as construction costs go up, but we are talking about having an indoor walking track in there as well. That's something that's missing from Ames. I think I'll speak for everyone and say that, I think everyone is supportive of it, but it's obviously another added cost. And so, yeah, more to come on that. I think John might know the timeline better, but it'll still be a few years before we see everything come to fruition. But it's exciting, and I'll just throw in another plug while I have the microphone as well. If you're not aware, we are building a plaza in downtown Ames as well, since we're talking about downtown. And that, again, just sort of goes along with our efforts to try to make a more vibrant and engaging space for people of all ages. And so right across the street from City Hall, you'll see a lot of construction taking place. It will be a multi-season outdoor space for people that will have, water features in the summer, an ice track in the winter for ice skating, places for people to gather and eat, food trucks and music and all of those great things. So that's what's happening.
Timeline is they hope to take bids end of this year or very early in 2024, probably do demolition clear the site during the winter time when it's most cost effective, and then break ground in spring of so basically a year from now. And then the estimate is it will take probably about 16 to 18 months for construction. So we're hoping to be able to cut the ribbon in late summer, early fall of 2025.
Is there any further comment on that? Maybe City Council? If not, we'll move it over to Senator Hackbarth.
So I'm a huge fan of this idea. My one question is, since this is underneath student engagement and Iowa State already has 2 indoor pool facilities and an indoor walking track in our 2 recreational centers, how do you plan on, actually obtaining that student engagement and encouraging students to attend this facility?
Gloria?
I would say that the niche that this fills is especially for students with families. And having a zero-depth pool for the kids and slides for the kids and lazy river for walking and the all of the lanes for lap swimming, the whole family can go there. So while many of you might be going to the state gym and the facilities over there by or wherever, those people with families will probably appreciate the variety of facilities that will be available in the Fitch Family Aquatic Center.
Senator Keeler.
Given, I guess, that we are on the student engagement category, I don't really have a whole lot of thoughts on this. So I guess the reason why I want to speak is just to gather the council's thoughts and, I guess, opinions on what you guys do right now to kind of engage with students outside of these regular meetings with student government. So if you guys have any insight on that, I am curious.
Tim, you want to jump in on that one, and Anita, and then actually maybe all 4 of us could.
Sure, it's a great question. I mean, half of our residents here are students, so it's sort of incumbent on us to be intentional about reaching out to students. I have the privilege of teaching a class every day on campus, so I teach one section of business law and then teach an entrepreneurial studies, a senior level class. And so that gives me an opportunity to meet students and engage and try to listen to their thoughts about how we can make Ames a better place. I'm also invited periodically to speak to student groups on campus. And I always say yes to those. It's an opportunity for me, once again, to engage and to listen and hear those thoughts. I will tell you, when I was a student here in the mid-'80s, I know that was a long time ago. What were you doing in the mid-'80s? Yeah, I thought so. So I actually I could have cared less about the rest of the community. I was here to study, play basketball, and date my future wife. And so I liked Ames, but my focus was really on the university. And so I love the fact that we're even having this conversation, so I appreciate asking that question, because we would love all of you to stay in Ames. Like every one of you, please consider staying in Ames, because it's a great place to live. But our chief priority is to keep you safe. So we think very strongly about safety issues, but we also want to make sure there are amenities that would give you a reason to stay. So that's sort of part of our thought process. We want to make the kind of community that you'd love to stay.
Anita?
Thank you. Not good with the technology, evidently. I just want to echo what Councilperson Garten said about wanting to make this a place where you want to stay. And I would also talk about opportunities for folks to work with or partner with the city. There have been a number of initiatives where we try to make opportunities for different units of the university, student groups to come in and give voice to issues that they're concerned about. But also, if there's something, an idea that you have or something that you would like to see happen, I hope you know that you can reach out to council. We are really interested in hearing your ideas and knowing more about the kind of community you would like to live in after you graduate. What are the kinds of amenities that you would like to have? How can we make sure there's the type of housing that you would like to live in? And how can we make this a place that you would like to stay? But your involvement now is also an option, and I imagine that someone will talk about boards and commissions as one of those ways, but I did want to mention that there are also opportunities to intern with us as well as engage as student groups with council and with the city.
So I'm going to call out President Ludwig. He said something earlier that struck me as kind of representative of what I hear a lot, which is SciRide wants to work with the residents and the students. Students are residents. And unfortunately, when I ask students if they're residents, they usually say no. You know, I come from somewhere else, right? In fact, I polled a class that I was working with in community and regional planning, and I asked how many of you live in Ames, or how many of you are Ames residents, and one person raised their hand. And then I said, how many of you live in Ames, and they all raised their hand. So there is a gap in understanding that we care about you as residents if you live in our community. That doesn't mean you have to stay here forever, although as my colleagues have said, we'd love it if you did. But if you don't think of yourselves as residents, you might not take advantage of the opportunities that are available. And we really want you to do that. One of the things that Councilmember Rollins mentioned is that there are partnering opportunities with units on campus. And I've been involved for the last 3 years now, I guess, partnering with a group from the Community and Regional Planning Department on engagement with underrepresented groups in the community. And guess what? Students are underrepresented. You are a high percentage of residents, but you are not connecting with government, and therefore you're underrepresented. So we have been working to increase engagement and try different novel strategies of engaging with students and all those other groups that may feel disconnected from their city government, because we believe that the city can be better if we get people invested. And we want people to trust us. There's a lot of distrust in government these days, and unfortunately, city government gets the blowback from what's happening at the state and federal level. We are a nonpartisan organization. We care about your experience living in Ames. We care about your potholes and your lousy sidewalks that might be tripping up your scooters. We are not arguing politics on the dais. And we make a conscious effort not to do that. So if you think that we aren't going to listen because maybe we're too liberal or we're too conservative, we will listen to whoever you are and wherever you are in your political spectrum, and we will do what we can to make your life in Ames better. And that's my soapbox. I'll climb down now.
I think I'm going to break this into maybe two parts. One is directly in terms of how do we seek student input. There's not really an intentional direction or a way that we go out and try and do random surveys or whatever. We are really blessed to have both Tabitha as ex officio, and then as you're aware, Rachel Junk is one of the council members. She's not able to make it tonight. But she's also a student, and so we look to them to give the students' perspective, and we're expecting them to go and solicit their peers and get feedback. And I would say also that had a good relationship with President Ludwig and also with other former student government officials to try and engage with that. So, but in terms of actually trying to reach out to the 30,000 students and get direct feedback, that's really not happening. And if you have some ideas on how we can do that, we'd be all ears to do that. But I do want to share that there's a lot of things that council does do to really try and enhance your life while you're here. First of all, the quality of life in terms of all the parks, recreation and bike trails. But we have Kingland across the street from campus wanted to redo, they wanted to be across the street from campus because they wanted to provide intern opportunities for people. And so council actually provided some significant financial incentives for them to do a major project, which really kind of served as a catalyst to kind of help, redo, most of campus town. We know there's still a nuclear waste site, on Lincoln Way, where the building's torn down. Hopefully that'll be taken care of soon, but someone else owns the property. We don't own the property. But the research park, we're just thrilled at all the different opportunities out there for students, and Cyride goes out there. I don't know that necessarily it goes to every door, but the point is it's providing service, out there. But so that's a great opportunity. We're certainly, the city manager and I meet with Dr. Winterstein and several of the other administrative cabinet members on a quarterly basis to keep touch of what's going on. I would say that Chief Newton, Aaron Baldwin, Ryan Vanderheiden from student government, I have come to greatly respect and appreciate the partnership with them. We've done a lot of things regarding mental health over the last few years, but they've been a great connection to the campus. And then we have a campus and community commission that has been, it's kind of a little bit dormant right now, but basically its intent is to try and increase the communication between the city, the community members, and also student government, with the student body. And then last I'll just say is that boards and commissions, I've been trying to get the word out to get students to apply for that. I would say that I was a little disappointed this year. The pool of people who applied as students for boards and commissions, even though we talked about it and tried to get the word out, was pretty shallow this year. But there are a number of boards and commissions that have one-year terms, and they're intentionally designed so that you could serve on a board or commission for just 1 year. I know Jacob has served on both. President Ludwig. I call him Jacob when we're not in formal settings. Anyway, was on transit board, but also served on our Parks and Recreation Commission. And I think that was a great opportunity to really get involved with that too. And I'll just say I'll just one-up Tim. And that is, I was here in the early to mid 70s on campus as an ISU alum. So most of you, or all of you, probably were not even a gleam in your parents' eyes at that point in time. And I too just lived on campus, and went to Dogtown, didn't have a car. So I rarely ventured off of campus to do much, but there's so much to offer. And I really appreciate your comment, how can we get more student engagement, but also the comment about, more stops in downtown with Cyride to try and get, down there, and also to the mall as well too. So I think we are not here to say we got it all right. We're always looking for new ways to do it. But if you have suggestions, and we talked about this last time, I think media has changed so much. It used to be radio, TV, newspaper was about it. Now it's just it's a huge universe. What are you going to? Facebook? You going to TikTok? You going to Instagram? What are you doing to try and get your information? And our public information officer tries to be on all those platforms to get information out about the community, but it's very hard to try and capture, everybody. So, great question. Thank you for asking that.
Senator Kamstra.
Quick one this time. Do you have any plans to welcome back nearly 50% of the residents back to Ames in August? Like as a city, do you know of any plans that are in place?
No, we don't want them to come back. No, just kidding. Well, council has committed to the Cyclone Welcome Weekend. We fully support that, and we partner with that, not only through law enforcement, but also we have staff that go out and knock on the people in the neighborhoods. And then I will say this too, is that the Chamber of Commerce also has been a great partner, and they're trying to get more deals set up for students in downtown or in different retail environments. And then also last year, and I believe we're going to do it again this year, council donated $5,000 cash to help defray some of the costs for the breakfast that was held on Central Campus. I think that was on a Saturday morning, I believe, is when it was. And so we do want to really celebrate that. And I think if you go downtown, there's banners saying, welcome back students as well too. But if there's other things we can do that you think would be beneficial to really make students feel we're glad you're back, we're open to suggestions as well.
Senator Margaret.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment while we're on the topic of student engagement, or I guess kind of a plug. But this is a topic I'm very passionate about because I've lived in Ames pretty much all my life. And the start of my involvement with student government was being an at-large on our local affairs committee. And one thing we're trying to do on that committee is build better student recognition of so many of the resources we talked about tonight that the city's been building to make life better in Ames, because it's the city's responsibility to do those things, and then it should be our responsibility to help students become aware of them. Mm-hmm. So we're in the very early brainstorming stages of trying to figure out how to bring more of these resources to students, because some of the people who are the most knowledgeable about these things are in this room right now. And we think there should be more students who are more aware of these. So this is just kind of a general thing that if you're in student government, we'd love your help with that initiative. If you're on the council, we'd love to make connections with you and hear your advice, no matter what it is, about how we can better connect with students and then what things we should be promoting. So that's just something that we're working on right now, and I think it's relevant to the conversation. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to do the podcast with President Ludwig. And so I'm not really a big video type maker, but maybe that's something that we need to explore in terms of just getting together with some students, and talk about what's going on or being interviewed. And it's hard to describe things in a minute or less. My understanding is you want to have videos that are really short, sweet, to the point. But we're all ears, and if we can do that to make people really have a fuller, richer experience in Ames, we're all for it. So I guess the point is that you're right, and I appreciate that. It's all of us. It's not just some of us or just one entity getting that word out. And so appreciate that perspective and that feedback.
Senator Becker.
Back on the kind of engagement, you had said that there might be some kind of deal book. I just had a recommendation from my hometown. So they did a coffee shop bucket list thing where it was like you got $1 off a drink if you had this booklet, and then it was every coffee shop within a 20-mile radius. And so I feel like that'd be really good for college students who are always looking for coffee and a place to study. So if you could do some kind of deal book with that. I know Cafe Diem, Burgies, like there are places that students love to go, and I think that would really draw people further into the community than just the coffee shops here on campus.
I highly support that. All right, if there's no further conversation about student engagement, we'll now move on to the Climate Action Plan. This conversation will last about 10 minutes. Senator Engelken.
Hello, thanks for coming out. Can one of you explain basically what the Ames Climate Action Plan is and what the goals you decided on are?
Who's going to go first? Go ahead, Gloria.
It's too bad Bronwyn isn't here. We are trying to determine what the next steps will be for us. We have taken recommendations from our consultants, and they have come up with what they are calling the 6 big moves that Ames would need to make in order to reach net zero by 2050. And those 6 big moves cost, and Tim probably has the number in his head better, I'm remembering $24 billion. Was that?
2.3, but it's going up.
It's a huge, huge number, right? The number is spread across the community. So it's not the city of Ames will spend $2.4 billion. It's you improving your home and you improving your relationship with trash and reducing, recycling, that sort of thing. So if everybody invests the total amount, 2.4 billion, still increasing. We have to determine what's going to be wise for us to invest in as a city and what tolerance level we believe our residents will have for investing in their own homes or in the practices that they employ to reduce their footprint. And so we have taken recommendations from staff. They've looked at what we might count as the biggest bang for the buck. How much can we get out of making the moves that are not going to bust our budget and that are not going to negatively impact our residents in inequitable ways? So every one of the steps, the big moves, was analyzed by staff, also looking through the social justice lens to determine whether we are adversely impacting any particular segment of the community, which would include students, in ways that make it impossible for them to afford to participate in the climate action plan. So this is still an ongoing discussion. Council has not authorized any particular moves, and we are still assessing what we think is wise. Now, alongside that, and maybe the mayor has more to say about this, is that we have been impacted in our own decision-making, our fiscal decision-making, by what has been happening at the State House in Des Moines and the ability to collect revenue for municipal functions. And so all of this is still in flux, and the conversation is ongoing. And I think that once we know what that monetary impact on the city finances is going to be, we'll be better positioned to determine what makes sense, but it all has to be taken as a package. So that's where we are, long way around of saying it.
Deb, do you want to offer anything else? I apologize for not introducing Deb Shildwell. She's one of our assistant city managers, and she's actually, this is her area that she's been working on as part of her duties.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and great job, Gloria, on summarizing what we've been working on now for almost 2 years. So the first thing we had to do was set a target, and that target is 83% by 2030, net zero by 2050, pretty aspirational. But the 6 big moves that our consultant, SSG, has put together has sort of formed this roadmap as to where we can head and progress towards that target. And I think that's a really important thing to remember is it's something to be working towards because of the time it takes, the cost involved, the behavior changes, the education to people. What is a retrofit, for example? How are we going to retrofit homes? How are we going to make sure that there are dollars available for people who need incentives to retrofit their homes? Another thing we talk about are electric vehicles. And so one of the big moves is reducing vehicle emissions. So that's taking all the fossil fuel vehicles, not only your car, but the city plows and the equipment that we use to maintain our roads, all of those moving into more of an electric vehicle position. Well, those vehicles aren't that readily available, and some of them are still kind of in the concept stages when it comes to larger types of equipment. So there are a lot of things outside of our control to work towards this goal, But there are a lot of things that are inside our control, and that has to do a lot with our behavior in terms of how we're moving ourselves about the community, what we're doing with our trash, what we're doing with the things that we're purchasing or maybe recycling or reusing. So we do have a council workshop coming up on April 18th on the Climate Action Plan. You're all very welcome to attend that or watch the video that will be recorded. And SSG, our consultant, will be a part of that meeting, and council will be discussing for the first time the first draft of the Climate Action Plan that has the implementation strategies included in that, but it's the first draft that's available for council to look at. And then following that meeting, the draft will be available to the public to provide comment on, and we'll be taking a final plan to council probably sometime later May or later June for final consideration and adoption. So it's been rolled out slowly, but we've needed to take the time to really look at it and see what feasibility is involved and legality. We have, for example, building codes. We're not allowed as a municipality to come up with our own building codes or have an ordinance around that. We have to follow the state building code. So there are those kinds of laws that we have to take into consideration with our plan as well.
Gloria mentioned $2.3 billion. Just to give you an idea of how much money that is, right now, this year, council just approved a budget. This is the operational budget. Is about $34 million. That's 68 years worth of money that would have to go just a climate action plan if we were funding and paying for everything. I mean, it's just we start using billion and trillion, and you start putting the numbers in. Oh, there's a lot of zeros after that number, you know. And this does not include anything on campus, because Iowa State has its own climate action plan. So Iowa State is a city, kind of city, so to speak, within a city. And so there's only so much we can do, and how much we can also legally help fund or underwrite or incentivize as well too. So there's some pretty heavy lifting that's going to have to happen. I think the big thing that's just making our heads spin is just the incredible amount of money that's going to require. And I think it's also presumptive to think that everyone's going to be driving an electric vehicle in 7 years or 10 years as well too. But that is required in order to meet the target. But how are you going to expect people? We talked about affordable housing. Well, it's pretty hard to expect people to be driving electric cars because they're all basically you're buying a new car. You're not buying used cars. So good question, and it's like everything in city. It's complex, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. But the good news is we've been working on this for over 40 years. We've been trying to be sustainable, and just another snippet is that we have a waste to energy study that council just saw, because we have a 40-year-old resource recovery plant that takes in solid waste from 13 different communities, and to replace that and to try and generate some electricity, the cheapest undertaking was over $100 million. And someone's got to pay for that, and it has to basically be paid for through tipping fees, the haulers, and also underwritten through subsidies that different communities on a per capita basis, contribute. And so we're trying to be sensitive to what that's going to do to students, because you pay for that in your rent. If the garbage goes up, you're going to pay for it in terms of rent increases, and that's what Tim was getting to. If property taxes go way up, the landlords aren't going to pay that out of their own pocket. They're going to basically pass that on, via higher rent as well too. So that's why the fiscal management of the city is really important. And also, if we start underwriting a lot of different things that require property taxes to go up higher to help do climate action things, well, that's going to translate into things that affect students as well as, homeowners and business owners, so.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just to dovetail with what the mayor said, I want to just say thank you to Deb. She has done a tremendous amount of the lifting in our analysis of these things, and as well as some other members. We have a very close partnership with Iowa State. Many of you know Mary Rankin. I think she's a rock star. She's served with Deb as part of this analysis team. And we have had, as far as I remember, unanimous votes on every single sustainability climate measure that's come before council up until this point. Do you guys all get along all the time? Every vote is the same? No? Well, so same thing with council. In fact, there's healthy value in having debate. That's why there are a lot of you here. And so you bring different opinions and different backgrounds. And I hope you don't agree all the time. That'd be sort of weird, wouldn't it? And so there's value in plurality of leadership. And so we've had a robust conversation about the price tag of this. That's been my concern. But I hope that as we look at the price tag of particular aspects of this, that we'll be able to zero in on those things, as Councilperson Betcher has indicated. What are those things that are within our reach? What are those things that will have the greatest bang for the buck? But I want to encourage you that when we think about climate action plan, this isn't just something that government does. This is something we do on personal decisions. All of us on council believe that we need to be working towards greater sustainability goals. But so it's personal composting. It's making decisions to bike or walk instead of take your car. There are all kinds of conscious decisions that all of us need to rethink if we're going to possibly hit these goals. So I just want to, it's a very dynamic, it's not a 10-minute conversation, but this should give you a sense that, and I love the question that you posed, we should be having hard conversations. And so at some point, we're going to be asked to spend money, and the question is, how much should your taxes go up? How much should these different utility fees go up? At what point does the pain become too much? And that's for us to have as part of a robust conversation. Will we agree all the time? No. But I promise it'll be a civil and thoughtful conversation.
Senator Holliday.
Maybe. There we go. So looking at the agenda, it talks about recycling on campus and in Ames. And I guess like on campus, we have our solar powered recycling compactors, and we just recently passed a hefty bill to increase the number of those available on campus. I personally, I don't live on campus, and I only live about an hour and a half away from home. So I take all my recycling home, and I also have many friends who live many hours away, so I take their recycling for them back to my home, as silly as it may sound. But what recycling resources are there in Ames, and are there plans to increase their availability or anything of that sort?
Yeah, that's a good question, and there's a couple of things. One is our resource recovery plant actually converts what we can burn into electricity. So there's not a formal recycling of that. Now that's not all of it. Maybe some has to be landfilled, but they do reclaim the metal. They actually have high-powered magnets that actually sort and pull that out, and it's actually sold, and it's helped supplement some of our operational expenses. We don't want to see glass go into the waste stream, and that gets recycled. So you probably see it Fairway stores or some other stores. You get this big yellow dumpster. You can throw that in there, or you can go to the resource recovery plant. And Tim mentioned the composting. I've joked before, my least favorite job that my wife has me do is hauling the food waste. It's worse in the summer when it stinks so bad, but over to the resource recovery plant, and we actually are composting some of that. But council has initiated, and actually we'll be hearing that, I think we'll be hearing back from staff soon, that working with local solid waste haulers is actually doing two things. One is, right now in all neighborhoods, you may have up to 7 or 8 different waste haulers driving through the same neighborhood on every day. I mean, not every day, but the point is that 5 days a week, you may see one week, or one day, 2 or 3 the next day, another one the next day. And the point is, it's just crazy. So one, it's using a lot of fuel. 2 is a lot of wear and tear on our roads. But 3 is it doesn't seem very efficient. So we're actually trying to see if it's possible to try and create zones where you would have just one hauler that would essentially serve that one area. And part of that would be, what would they provide? Could they provide recycling options as curbside pickup as that as well too for cardboard, glass, metals? And then also, is it possible to even do a food waste, composting, pickup as well too? So that's actually in the conversation right now. I know years ago there was some place that you could actually take cardboard and actually get it recycled. I don't know if I think that's shut down. I don't know if there is one right now, but we don't formally have a recycling center right now. Mm-hmm. Lori, do you want to add to that?
We do have a recycling center for some things, and that is we do have a new redemption center out on Lincoln Way, far west Lincoln Way. So cans and bottles you can recycle out there. It is not a city redemption site. And the city has never been in the business of doing bottle and can redemptions. So I'm happy to see that the private sector has stepped up on that again. And for a while, we did not have that. The other thing I would say is that especially with the on-campus advertising that I see, posted here and there about how to recycle, which bins to put things in, there is a lot of confusion that's created about what can actually be recycled and what can't. And with the city of Ames, we have often said, well, it's basically single stream recycling, but it's really not, because you have to sort out the glass. But everything else, if you're off campus, can go in your garbage. We would prefer that you didn't put food waste in there, because that makes those things that are burnable for refuse-derived fuel not usable. But otherwise, if you sort the glass out, we can take everything else and sort through it at the resource recovery plant. I believe, and maybe Deb knows the answer to this, I think that there has been discussion about expanding the food waste collection, making it possible to bring in more of that and handle it. So I'll let her answer that.
Yeah, it's a food waste diversion's a program that we started in the summer of 2019, and we have little green buckets that you can get and put your food waste in that, and then take it to resource recovery. There's a big red bin there to dump it. Or we also have rebates on compost receptacles for your yard, and those are available through our electric services department. Or if you think of other creative ways to do composting in your location. And I know many of you living in a rental situation are limited to being able to participate in that. But those are some examples. The expansion, I believe, is through the garbage collection report that we'll have follow-up on in May. I believe May 21st is council workshop on that. We had a staff report just about how the system works in Ames back in September. I believe there's about 13 garbage collection haulers that come into Ames, and you're free to choose who you want to have pick up your garbage. And some of those haulers have extra services that you can pay for organics or yard waste or that type of thing. But we are looking, as a part of this follow-up, what can we do to offer more curbside recycling, the food waste diversion on a curbside basis, that sort of thing, to make sure that we're keeping those things out of the waste stream. So it is around using your garbage and what you purchase and the packaging that's involved and all of those good things as we take a look at our garbage system.
I'd say one of the best recycling that goes on is on the Rampage. And there are tons and tons and tons of waste that are being diverted from going into dumpsters and actually helping people who may be under-resourced or, challenged or looking for a great bargain. Are y'all aware what rummage, y'all know what can't even say it, rummage rampage is? Okay. Don't feel afraid if you say you don't know. It's, you can, if you're gonna, when you're moving out towards the end of the year, I think it's towards the end of July, you can take things that you don't want to either move to a new apartment or take off or take away from Ames. It's everything from furniture to pets to you name it. And it's volunteers help organize it, price it, and it gets sold at a huge discount. And I think it gets clear cut. I think stuff just, I know Gloria has volunteered there. But the other thing is that we've had people that have let go of, either reptiles or fish, put them in, or let animals go instead of taking their pets with them. And so you can actually dispose of them, basically repurpose or rehome them, that way. And I think that their animal control helps, with that to try and minimize and help our, our animal friends continue on their life and not be thrown out in the wild. Go ahead, Gloria.
So I would just encourage you, if you are a member of a student organization or know people who are members of student organizations who might need money, you can volunteer at the Rummage Rampage, which I don't have the exact dates for this year, but it's usually starting in the last week of July and running into the beginning of August, right when you're doing your changeover in your apartments. The amount of money that is taken in is divvied up among all of the volunteer organizations. And even if you aren't a member of an organization, you can volunteer for an organization. So I've volunteered in the past for the Campus Pride organization, for the Ames History Museum, for the Campus Town Action Association, and I'll put in 40 hours, and those hours go to the organization, and then the money is allotted depending on how many hours your organization puts in. So it's an excellent way to support the student body, to support the community, and to get some really nice stuff. There are a lot of people in the community who are finding out about this now, and so there is expensive stuff coming into the Rummage Rampage. It's not just the couch that was sitting on the lawn for 3 months. It is stuff that people are taking right out of their homes throughout the community and just treating it as an opportunity for someone else to use that item. And so the reuse and the recycling aspects are tremendous, and it's fun to work there. So that's my pitch. Please consider volunteering.
Senator Kamstra.
I'll just also encourage people to go to that because I got a 55-inch TV for $20. So yeah.
Does it work? Yes. Oh.
All right, wonderful conversation about the Climate Action Plan, but the remainder of our time together will be open discussion, so no topic. So if anyone has comments about that, we'll start with Speaker Mahoney.
So I know this has been something that I have complained about and a number of other people have complained about that live off campus, but honestly, the traffic lights are awful sometimes. I know a particularly salient example for me is every time I go through 13th and Stange, the next light, it'll be turned green and the next light will turn red at the same time. And so it's amazing how many lights you'll just hit the red light in, and I know there's a smart traffic system coming. I just was curious if there's any update on timing for that.
Yeah, that actually is by design. We try and frustrate everybody so you don't drive a car. It's part of the Climate Action Plan, actually. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, this is a really exciting project that's coming. There's actually, I believe, right now, fiber is being installed, and it's a multi-phase project. I think that we've been able to get funding for at least 3 of the phases. And it's going to be primarily on our main thoroughfares. And what it is that it's a smart or intelligent traffic system that will have cameras that will be able to, in real time, determine if you are trying to, if you're sitting at a light and there's no one going the other direction, it may go ahead and just change that light so you can go ahead and keep going through. And certainly they want to keep the flow of traffic going. So there's going to be computers that will be helping analyze that. They can get real-time data. I would agree with you. It gets frustrating. There's the stop and go is really frustrating. But I don't know. It's going to take, I think, a couple of years for it to get fully implemented. And does anyone, Tim, or do you know where that? I know that the main thoroughfare is going to be on. It's going to be on Duff. It's going to be on 13th, I believe. I don't know if it goes up to Stang or not, but anyway. The routing, but anyway, but yeah, this is a multi-million-dollar endeavor, and part of it is just putting in the fiber and getting the technology put in place. But we have a pretty innovative traffic engineer, and I think it's a little better in some parts at times, but I think it also depends upon when people pull up to the light and then trigger the sensor in the pavement, and then all of a sudden it just ends up being luck of the draw. I will say too that actually in 13th and Grand, that's a terrible intersection. It really is. I mean, and there's actually going to be a project undertaken there to introduce turning lanes. And also trying to get some better flow going through there. And I think that's one of the intersections that will long-term be picked up as that. So go ahead, Gloria.
So one pro tip, if you're driving down Lincoln Way, the lights are timed optimally for 29 miles per hour. So if you have been speeding down Lincoln Way, you are going to be stopping at many, many lights. So there's your tip for the evening, 29 miles per hour. You should be able to cruise smoothly down Lincoln Way. Of course, the guy behind you is going to want to go 35 miles per hour, so that could be a problem.
So if that doesn't work, it's gloria.betcher@amescitycouncil.org.
And I will be the person driving 29 miles per hour because I hate stopping at those lights.
I will just jump in and say we really need your help on. You need to be pushing out the Cyclone Welcome Weekend. I know last year we kind of rolled that out. I mean, the university took the lead on it, but we were very supportive of that. But really encourage you to be putting on your own social media feeds, talking to your friends. The whole idea is enjoy celebrating coming back to school, but we want you to do it safely. And we're not saying you can't have parties, but just more or less we're trying to avoid a repeat of VISHA. And this is something that I'm not sure if maybe some of you were on Senate at this time, but I still remember sitting right here and having Chief Newton and Chief Huff both say, with all seriousness, we're very concerned that this weekend is quickly going to be turning into VISHA 2.0. And so we do not want anyone getting hurt. We don't want property damage. But we want you to be able to enjoy coming back, and that's partly what we're trying to do is we're supportive of trying to get that Cyclone Welcome Weekend. But we got to get the word out, and we heard a lot of people say, well, we didn't know what was even going on. So the more we can get that out and participate in it, the better.
Senator Slater.
Yeah, so I had read an article in the Iowa State Daily, it was a couple weeks ago, about RAGBRAI coming through Ames. And just a lot of it had talked about the city suspending some ordinances, so I was wondering if you guys could just talk on that.
I think it's primarily, we're going to be allowing some, camping, overnight camping or in some of the parks. And also, I think it's some vehicle use in limited locations. So it's primarily, RAGBRAI is an amazing organization. They apparently provide you like a 3-ring notebook that's about that thick that says, here's what it's helpful to do, and they ask for. So I think there's also has to do for some adult beverage sales down on Main Street as well too. And also there has to do with some, if you have a food truck, you just can't go and set up your food truck, for example, in an area close by where they're going to have a lot of people, because they need that. They get the profit they get off of that helps underwrite essentially staff and trucks. And also when they came through in 2018, cities were responsible for finding and I think paying for the entertainment, and now RAGBRAI takes care of that, and so they need that to help offset that. So I think that it's primarily just a temporary suspension for logistics as well as for camping accommodations of individuals. So, and it's a great partnership between Iowa State and the city. Gloria, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm on the Discover Ames board, which is our Ames Convention and Visitors Bureau. And some of the plans for RAGBRAI 50th anniversary include the cycling around Jack Trice and getting a look at the stadium. The main stage for the event will be downtown, as will the primary beer garden. And after RAGBRAI comes through Ames, it will be moving on to Ankeny, and there will be an attempt to break a world record for the number of people riding that segment. So people will be coming to Ames to hook up with the pack and then riding down to Ankeny for the world record attempt. And I'm probably going to be wrong. I want to say this is occurring on June 26th. But it might be the 25th. The 26th is my anniversary, so that's stuck in my head. But there will be a lot of energy in town over those days, and there will also be enhanced vendor opportunities that those are covered by our ordinance. So people can be coming into town and vending various things that you might not normally find in Ames, that especially are of interest to cyclists. So come on to RAGBRAI. It should be a good time.
Tim, John?
Yeah, just to clarify the date, it's going to be in Ames on July 25th is when we'll be in Ames that Tuesday night. So it's a great, great party. Come to that. And my last pitch tonight, we've talked about a lot of great partnerships tonight. One of the ones that's been in Ames for probably close to 20 years is a program called Stash the Trash. It's on April 29th. And so this is a great opportunity to get some groups together, go out, pick up trash in your neighborhood. I have a running group, and we're going to do what's called plogging. Anyone know what plogging is? No? It's a Swedish term for running and picking up trash at the same time. So you'll learn something tonight. So plogging. So April 29th, Stash the Trash.
All right, we'll have our final discussion with Senator Mays.
I just wanted to add on to Senator Mahoney's note about like Staines Road and issues with that. I live in University Village, and the left turn out of there is probably one of the most like dangerous just like turnouts in Ames that I've witnessed. We're either kind of sitting there I've sat there for up to 7 or 8 minutes waiting for traffic to clear to turn left out of there, or especially when conditions are icy and you're trying to get out of that area, it's really difficult. So I feel like either implementation of some type of stoplight somewhere around there so that people can get out easier, or better like management of the lights both like by 13th Street and then further up would be really good for that area. I just wanted to note that because it's been like the biggest thing I've noticed. I've been like, I don't think this is a university thing. I think this would be a city thing, but yeah.
Well, actually, it is a university thing.
It is?
Yeah, and it's very strange is that whenever the university owns property on both sides of the street, then they have jurisdiction. So I believe that the traffic management would actually be a university situation. But when you get to 13th Street and Stang, then you have a really Yeah, I don't, that's I have to ask a traffic engineer on that one, but, so I know if it sounds confusing, it is confusing, but that one, I might just defer that to the administration and see if they have jurisdiction on that one.
So I would just say that that point is University Road. Stang has actually got segments to it, some of which are city and some of which are university. So when you get past Vinker heading north, the city of Ames, we have private residences opposite Shilliter. And so the west side of Stang, north of Vinker, is the city of Ames. And the east side of Stang and everything south of Vinker is University Institutional Road. So the city usually tries to partner with the university on paving so that we don't have multiple paving crews out there paving our section of road. But that particular intersection would be a university intersection. So traffic control there would be university, but I believe we work with the university at 13th and at 24th. So those intersection controls are done in partnership, I believe, between the university and the city. And there is going to be paving out there, so if you haven't seen the signs. So if you're trying to head north on Stang starting April 10th, there is going to be paving to improve the situation of the potholes and patching, et cetera. So be aware if you happen to be driving out there.
All right, we're now going to wrap it up with closing comments, and I'll turn it over to ex officio Eaton.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Thank you guys so much for contributing all of your thoughts and ideas and comments and concerns. I really appreciate it. It makes my job easier. It makes City's Council's job easier. It also makes your guys' job easier because you know what the community is working on and working towards. If you have any further questions about a topic you didn't have time to discuss or something you think about later, please feel free to reach out to me through my email or even through the City Council email. If you email City Council, I also get that email. So we highly encourage you to communicate with us your concerns and other topics you would like brought up at City Council. So
Yeah, once again, appreciate all the comments and the feedback. And I know a few years ago we just met once a year, and now we're meeting twice a year. I think it's really beneficial in the spring and the fall. We always look forward to it, and great feedback and input. I just want to mention that for student engagement in the community, one opportunity that maybe won't work right now, maybe you think about it in the fall, and that is mentoring. Is that there's a lot of kids through YSS or through the school system would really benefit from having an adult, and I consider you all adults, to just meet with and befriend and encourage and come alongside. And there's more openings than there are volunteers. And you can make a real difference in a student or a young person's life. And so maybe we can talk about that again in the fall. Try and provide some contact information for you. But it's just to see kids' eyes light up, and you may think you don't have a whole lot to offer, and in fact, you may become their hero, and have a real impact on them. So anyway, and just want to thank the leadership. Thank you for inviting us, and President Ludwig, wish you well on your journey. I did tease him at the board and commissions and said that I contacted Dr. Winterstein and said, you're not going to graduate, you got to keep on staying here. So, but anyway, appreciate your service here and engagement. And if you want to apply for boards and commissions next year, please consider doing that. It's a great way to get involved. And I know that, I think that virtually all of our council members, and I know I was on transit board for a number of years, and that just gives you a great insight into what's going on in the community, and maybe further opportunities to participate in city government.
All right, once again, thank you, everyone. On behalf of student government, we want to thank all the city council members for coming, and on our behalf, this meeting is adjourned. The student government portion will reconvene at 7:15, so we've got a nice 15-minute break for senators.
And entertain a motion to adjourn our city council meeting. Is there a second? Those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
No, senators don't have to say.